Hello. Today we're talking about military symbology. So all that means is symbols to represent different military units, and you'll see that in maps, um, and orders of battles, you will see these units displayed using certain symbols, and this guide will simply help you learn what some of those symbols mean. So first, we're talking about unit size. That's really important. So before you even begin to talk about whether it's an infantry unit or a cavalry unit, you need to first learn the size of units. So the smallest important unit is called a squad, around 4 to 10 people. It's a small group, and it's typically led by a sergeant in the British or American armies, and it's also commanded by a Fähnrich by uh, in the German army. So on the left, you'll see I put two different commander ranks for the US and UK armies, which tend to be pretty similar during World War II. And then I put the rank for the German army. And then after the squad is the section. Now it's not really used very much. Even back then it wasn't used that much, but you'll see sections being talked about once in a while, and it's just a little bigger than a squad. Now this is a platoon. It's made up of many sections or many squads. So it's commanded by a first or second lieutenant, and a platoon is usually what if you're a cadet and you become a commander for the first time, you're probably going to lead a platoon, and it's represented by 3 dots. But then after the platoon, it's represented by lines. So this is a company, and it's made up of a few. A company is made up of a few platoons, and is commanded by a captain or a major. And both of those ranks can command a company-sized unit. And then next up is a battalion. We're getting bigger and bigger. We're building up, represented by 2 lines. And it's usually commanded by a lieutenant colonel, although sometimes you'll see majors command battalions during World War II. And then next is a regiment, typically commanded by a colonel. And regiments are not used as much today in the American army, at least, but back in World War II, in which most of this channel is focused on, regiments are a big building block for all divisions and brigades, but now it's not used as much, and instead the U.S. Army uses a lot of brigades. In World War II, you'll see not as many brigades because regiments are usually preferred. Usually goes battalion, regiment, division rather than battalion, brigade, division. But you'll see some of these brigades appear, and this will be true in a lot of square divisions, as you call it, where it's made up of 4 regiments each, and 2 brigades per regiment. It's usually commanded by a brigadier or a brigadier general. And then next up is a division. This is the biggest kind of small unit, but it's also the smallest big unit. because a division is where it's like the dividing line between tactics and strategy, because division is like an entire set unit, and usually around the size of 10,000 to 20,000, and it's usually commanded by a major general. And then here's a corps. Corps actually can vary in size a lot. They can be anywhere from a couple divisions to maybe even 8 divisions, and so the range is pretty wide. So you'll see lieutenant generals and generals, 3-star and 4-star generals command corps. And then armies are bigger than corps. They're usually made up of a few corps, or simply like 8 to maybe 12 divisions sometimes. Armies they're units that differ in size a lot between different countries. Especially during World War II, you'll see that the Soviet armies are comparatively small, and also the Chinese armies are really small. Sometimes you'll see Chinese armies being smaller than Japanese corps if you go into that fighting. So the range of an army size is also pretty wide. And then next up is an army group. You don't see them quite as often, especially during peacetime. You almost never see army groups. They're war-based formations, and they're usually commanded by general of the army, like a 5-star general. And army groups can be small if they're reduced, but can be really large. I wrote of 150,000 to 800,000, but in some examples, like Army Group South in Germany during like mid-1942, it went over 1 million. So army groups can be really big, and there's technically some units that are higher. There's like a front or a theater, which is represented by 6 X's, but really you only see as high as army groups. So that's going to be the highest unit you'll really see. And now we dive into different unit types. So the most basic and most common in the army is, of course, the infantry. Very simple, represented by 2 lines. It's just an X, just across the rectangle. Keep in mind that in NATO's symbology, blue would be the color used for friendly units. So NATO units will always be blue rectangles, and enemy units will always be red diamonds. They'd be like tilted rectangles, tilted squares, but have the same exact cross for infantry. And then there's motorized infantry, which is just a variation of infantry, the same cross with a line through it. And then mechanized infantry is similar, but because it has more armored units in it, you kind of have that oval that is used to represent tanks and armored units on top of the infantry. So that's mechanized infantry. Next is cavalry, and you'll see cavalry a lot in the Polish army, a good number of cavalry units in the German army, and this is just represented by a solid black triangle on the bottom right. Next up is armor. Sometimes this little oval is towards the center, but I like to draw that below the center because they represent they represent tanks, and because the amount of tanks are like shaped like an oval, you can picture it. You want to draw a tank really quickly, it's an oval. So armor is oval. Artillery is just a dot. I actually don't know why artillery is represented by a dot. Maybe it's supposed to represent the gun, but whatever. Regardless, artillery is a simple dot. Anti-tank is an upside down V. It's like a triangle. And you'll see these pretty often once you dig in deep into units, but you won't see any like large tank units. Like I don't think there's any such thing as an anti-tank division. You'll see anti-tank battalions and occasionally anti-tank regiments as well. Engineers are also one of those smaller units. Engineers just build bridges, construct things, build and destroy alongside the fighting forces. They're basically a sideways E, is how I like to think of it. It's just like 3 lines with 1 bar over it in the center. Reconnaissance looks like cavalry, but it's not shaded in, so it's just a straight line. You'll see that in some more modern, more contemporary symbology. Reconnaissance and cavalry are drawn the exact same way because people don't have time to actually fill in the dark area for cavalry. But there's supposed to be a difference, and in World War II, everyone shows reconnaissance as a diagonal line like this, and cavalry as a diagonal line with the bottom right triangle filled in. And then there's air. Sometimes these triangles are curved, but either way it's fine. People get the idea. It's an air unit. I think I didn't remember to mention, but air defense units are just an oval, like a semicircle, big semicircle across the entire rectangle. And then lastly on this presentation is medical units, just across. Fair and simple. I think you get the point. Just across. So there's a lot of other units that I could have mentioned, but it would take forever to talk about every single type of unit, so I did not do that. But yeah, that's all of the most common things you'll see within some of my videos on World War II, and it's important to understand what some of these are. So for practice, you can try to guess what these 3 are. This is an infantry division, that's an aerial battalion, and this is a cavalry brigade.